everyone, let's talk books. And today I have my February TBR. And so I did okay. I didn't do too terrible. I could have done better. I'd forgotten that February was a short month, but it was a pretty good reading month. So let's go through what I read in February. It looks like I read a total of 1, 2, 3, 4. Where's the other one? There are at least 5 books. Sorry, sometimes I'm using Goodreads to keep track of this, and I'm like, but alright, let's go through the books that I read. So the last one that I just finished was Sandra Brown's Prime Time. And this is the one that was my least favorite of my February reads because it's about, well, first of all, it's an audiobook. It comes with a disclaimer right at the front. This was written at a different time. And it's about a television reporter. She's a newswoman. And she's out trying to get the story of this World War II general. And he's the last surviving World War II general. And she wants to get a super coveted interview with him. And she manages to get him, but the son hates her. So of course they fall in love. And that's not the problem. The problem is the themes of well, women shouldn't work. Why is she a working woman? She can't really be a fulfilled woman until she's become a mother. And most of those opinions are expressed by our male hero. No, not okay. It gets worse. It gets worse because it's one of those books where she has to be seduced by him, right? But right before the moment in which she's seduced, it's sexual assault. He's getting very rapey with her. And to me, you don't go from basically a sexual assault to a seduction. It just doesn't happen that way. So anyway, a very troubling book, and so far it is my least favorite Sandra Brown book. And this whole oh well, it was written back in the day is give me a break. Anyway, I finished reading it, so it had to have been something there. I did kind of like the main character. I don't know, I was sort of interested in the story, so I finished listening to it. So I did give it 2 stars out of 5, but it is not a book or an audiobook that I recommend. The person doing the reading, though, the audio on it, did a really good job. She's a very good voice actor. But anyway, let's keep moving along the list. So I participated, or tried to participate in Contemporary-a-thon. I posted a TBR, and guess what? I read 0 books during Contemporary-a-thon. But I'm committed to that list because I'm going to read every single book in that list. It might just take me a little bit longer. One of the books on the list was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, and I read it on ebook. My library had it available through Overdrive. And oh my god, people are right. This is such an adorable, fun book. If you're interested in seeing my reactions as I was reading it, I posted a reading vlog while I was reading it, and it's a fun romance, workplace romance story that's fun. It is just fun. I think it's very hard sometimes to get the right chemistry in a kind of going when you go from a relationship that the main characters maybe hate each other to loving each other. It's really hard to keep that dynamic fun. And the author just did such a splendid job. I highly recommend it. I really do think if you're in the mood for a fun romance, you should go check out The Hating Game. So that was a book checked off of the Contemporary-a-thon list. So next up, I read An Unseen Attraction, and I read that on ebook as well. This one is by K.J. Charles, and this was my first, it's part of a series. It's the first in the Sins of the City series, and it was my first male romance novel, and I was really impressed by the way that the author was able to capture this moment. It's set in Victorian England, and Victorian England tends to be a place that gets discussed as a very kind of sexually repressive era in history, but it wasn't really. It wasn't really. And this is when kind of the development of the cities happens. And London is one of these major urban European cities. It's very historically accurate, that's what I'll say, in terms of the way in which male relationships were formed, the kinds of spaces that were available, in the way in which men created spaces for themselves in the city. I was reading it at the same time that I was rereading Queer London by Max Holbrook. If you're interested in denser history books, it is a book I recommend. I'm assigning it to one of my classes. If you don't like kind of denser academic books, it's going to be a little bit hard to get into, but that book does a really good job at describing the way in which men in London kind of use the city to create spaces, the way they interacted with the authorities, the way they were regulated, but just different attitudes. There were just different attitudes at that time about sex and sexuality and about homosexuality. And it wasn't all like the way traditional, what we see as traditional values. Anyway, I'm starting to lecture you about the history of sexuality, so I'll leave that for my classroom. And I'll move on to the next one that I read, which was Heartsick by Chelsea Cain. And I read this one on ebook as well, I believe so. It's an Archie Sheridan and Gretchen Lowell book. It's the first one in a series of books, and it is really good. So this was recommended by Jessie's Shelf here on YouTube, and she was so right about this book. It's a kind of thriller mystery book, and it's about a serial killer. And the story begins in which the detective and the serial killer have already met. She kidnaps him. The serial killer kidnaps the male detective. And then, as he's like dying, she calls the cops and calls the ambulance, saves his life. She ends up in jail. He's outside, and now there's a new kind of serial killer on the loose, and that our detective is brought back in to catch, and fun ensues. Not really fun. A thriller ensues. Anyways, I am here for the sick ride. It is a trippy story, and I love it. So I actually found the next 3 books in the series at my local used bookstore. I hauled them recently, and I'm gonna read the whole series, guys. So, anyways, if you're interested, I definitely think you should check it out. And let's see, last book that I read in February was Hunger, a Memoir of My Body by Roxane Gay. And this is the first book by Roxane Gay that I've read. And, oh man, it really got me. It's an emotional book. It's also like trigger warning for anybody with any kind of eating disorder. But I think it is especially good to read if you have people in your family that are dealing with an eating disorder or with body image issues. I think we all deal with body image issues, but it's like a deep dive into like what goes through somebody's head. And if you missed my vlog on it, I do have a vlog and for when I was reading it. But anyways, it's a really good book if you want to learn more, if you're interested. It's not for everybody. I think it would be something really hard if you're in the middle of going through something like that. So it's not for everybody, but it is a very, very good book. There's also another book that I actually finished in February, but I had started it. I think I finished at the very end of January, but I didn't because I filmed the January wrap-up a couple of days before the end of January. I didn't get to wrap it up, and that was Times Divide. It is book 3 of the Chronos Files by Risa Walker. So it's a YA time-traveling book, and it was really good up until the end. I was not a huge fan of the end, but I understood what the writer was doing. I understood it. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate the end. Overall, I really enjoyed the series, and I actually went ahead and bought my mom the first book because my mom really likes that kind of storylines, time traveling, history, all that stuff. So I knew she was gonna like it. But anyways, so the Kronos Files was a good series for me, and I'm glad I finally finished it. And, all right, so I think that is it. And I don't think I gave all the books here a rating. So like Primetime got 2 stars out of 5. The Hating Game is a 5-star read for me. And Unseen Attraction, it's also a 5-star read. Heartsick for me was a 5-star read. Hunger is a 5-star read. I've read a lot of good books. Times Divide was probably a 3.5-star read for me. Because I didn't like the ending, and I don't think the series is for everybody, but I really did enjoy it. There were 2 books on my TBR that I didn't get to, and that was Megan Cabot's Size 12 is Not Fat and Ceremony in Death, which is book 5 in the In Death series by J.D. Nora Roberts, and those are still on my list. I am planning on reading those books. I am currently reading another book that was in the TBR, which is Her Last Breath by Linda Castillo. That one was again recommended by Jessie Shelf, and I've got that one right here because I borrowed it from the library, and I am about a third of the way in. So far so good. I am really enjoying it. Clearly I'm really into thrillers because this is another thriller, and it takes place in the Amish country, and it's the mystery of like what happens to this Amish family that gets, so far it's that they've been run off the road, they're hit, and people die, and then it's about trying to figure out what happened. It's really good, really interesting. I don't know a whole lot about Amish communities, and this so far is giving a really interesting lens into kind of Amish communities. But yeah, anyway, so good reading month. I'm hoping to have a good reading month in March as well. And if you haven't subscribed already and you're interested in what my March TBR is going to be, that's going to be my very next video. So subscribe if you'd like to. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.